Hey everybody, welcome to another Bug of the Week episode. Today we gotta talk about mob spawning again, because after last week's video, the way mob spawning works in Minecraft was changed again. And again, this was not communicated through the changelog whatsoever. The changelog now has the section technical changes, but it mostly involves command block stuff. But apparently mob spawning, or the way mob spawning works, doesn't warrant an entry in that section. Anyway, here I'm gonna explain you how it works now. So in last week's video, the mob spawning was dependent on terrain level, meaning if you place a block one higher, mobs could spawn on that because it was above the terrain. And in this version, so 18W45A, mob spawning happens everywhere. So you can place a platform in the sky again, happens in caves, etc. So basically the mob spawning attempts are spread over the complete world from Y0 to Y255. So this might sound like good news in the first place, but it actually has some disadvantages compared to the mob spawning system we had since Minecraft 1.8 to 1.13. So I'll quickly explain how mob spawning works. So every tick, the game selects a single block in each chunk, indicated by those yellow lines, and tries to attempt to spawn mobs there. So it first selects the X and Z value, and then it needs to select the Y value or the height. And this Y selection changed over the years. For example, in 1.7 we had a so-called LC value, which basically determined between which blocks the spawning attempt was spread. So if you would at any point place a new block which would exceed this LC value, which basically was the highest block ever placed or generated, then the LC value was also adjusted. So if you would ever place a block here, then the spawn attempts, this would be Y84, then the spawn attempts are distributed between 0 and 84. So you have 1 in 84 chance that your mob, for example, spawns on top of this grass. If you would build it up higher, then the LC value was raised now to Y91, and therefore you had a 1 in 91 chance that a mob would spawn on top of this grass block, for example. So back then it was always really important to not arbitrarily place blocks really high, because it would mess up the LC value in case you're planning to make a mob farm. Also it was important to build a mob farm as low as possible. And this changed in Minecraft 1.8, and we got a dynamic LC value. So if you remove the block again, then the LC value went back to the lowest block, and then the spawn attempts were spread between technically this block and Y0, but it was a bit different. We also had that subchunk rule. It means if I place a block here, then the spawn attempts were spread up to this blue line here, so Y79. So I had a 1 in 79 chance that a mob would spawn there. If you go into the next subchunk, always indicated by those blue lines, then you have another 16 blocks where the spawn attempts are spread. Okay, so in Minecraft 1.13 this changed again, and we got a block by block rule, and now the spawn attempts were actually distributed between all blocks up to this block, and it was still a dynamic value. If you remove it again, then all the spawn attempts were spread between this block and Y0. Okay, and now in Minecraft in 18W45A, spawn attempts are spread between all 256 blocks. So that means the performance is decreased, because there's an issue with it. If the game attempts to spawn a mob, then there's all kinds of checks. So it randomly selects which mob to spawn, tries to spawn further mobs, etc. And that depends if an air block is selected or a full block like grass or stone. Okay, so stone block is selected, then the mob spawn attempt is just aborted, no extra calls are made, and this was better for the performance. Okay, since now we spread all the attempts between the highest block and the lowest block, the chance to select an air block is much higher, and the whole mob spawning gets more expensive, because all of those extra checks are made in random calls in order to try to attempt to spawn a mob. So this definitely decreases the performance. The system we had before in Minecraft 1.13, that all the spawn attempts are spread between 0 and the highest block, was probably best for the performance. Obviously, from a mob spawning aspect, the change we have right now in the latest snapshot is also really bad. So we're looking now at a standard shifting flow witch farm, and its rates were severely crippled by those changes. Reason is simple: instead of spreading the spawn attempts between Y0 and top of the farm, spawn attempts are now spread between Y0 and sky limit. So it's just a lot less likely that the game would attempt to spawn a witch inside of your witch hut area. Yeah, I did a short 30-minute test and averaged about 950 items per hour. You can also compare those rates, for example, to older Minecraft versions. So those would be ideal rates in older versions. In 1.8 you could get up to 7,650 items per hour. In 1.9 to 1.12 it was about 6,200 items per hour. In 1.13, because the pack size of the witches changed, down to 4,000 items, and with the current rules we're down to about 950 items per hour. So the efficiency compared to 1.8 would be down to an 8 approximately. This change would also affect other mob farm concepts to various degrees. For example, a slime farm would also be severely slowed down. A pigment gold XP built on top of the nether would be almost unaffected, because you already built it at sky limit. For other farm concepts, for example an overworld mob farm, mostly farm bones and gunpowder, you could compensate the loss in efficiency by adding more spawning spaces, but this also comes at a cost. You need to spend more time, materials, and also a bigger farm comes also with more lag that is created. Unfortunately, I really don't know what Mojang is currently trying to do with all those spawn algorithm changes, why they try to reinvent the wheel there. The system we had in 1.8 to 1.13 with the dynamic LC value was already pretty good from a performance perspective and also from a gameplay perspective. Because putting in more effort by trying to build the mob farm as low as possible and also preparing the area around it meant a high reward. So there's always a good thing in the current version. Doesn't matter if you build your farm high or low, you always get the same bad rates. So this also would make a lot of mob farm concepts obsolete. Try to build farms as low as possible. I think the current changes are meant to improve the performance of the game, but I just don't see how this is happening right now. In a normal default vanilla survival world, the mob spawning algorithm doesn't run most of the time anyway, because the mob cap is filled with mobs. And there were some issues in Minecraft 1.13 of lag caused by the mob spawning algorithm, because the pack size of fish was changed. There's also a video from Gnemon about this topic, but this was mostly fixed by limiting the volume of blocks where the mob spawning happens to a 128 block radius around the player, and those issues were actually already fixed. Don't see how those current changes would improve the situation any further. Alright, maybe let me know again what you think about those changes we have right now in the comment section. Thanks a lot for watching, see you in the next video, bye bye.